Hello and welcome to the NDTV Dialogues, a conversation of ideas. And who better to discuss ideas with than Sanjiv Mehta? He's the new president of FICCI and also, of course, the chairman of Hindustan Unilever, India's largest FMCG company. Mr. Mehta, thank you for being on the Dialogues and congratulations on your appointment.
Oh, thank you, Sonia, and my greetings to all your audience.
So it's been a year like no other with 2021, and we're now heading into 2022 with the worry over a new Omicron variant. What's your economic outlook, Mr. Mehta, for the year ahead? A challenging time to be heading an industry body.
Oh, absolutely. But, I'm very optimistic. If we look at the situation today and compare it with the same period last year, when we had not even started on a vaccination drive, and we were into a much more uncertain world. Economy was still declining rapidly, and look here, a year down the road, we are talking about from an economic perspective that we would recover this year all the GDP that we had lost last year. And on the health side, 1.3 billion doses in 1 year, and over 50% of the eligible population fully vaccinated. It's something which we as a nation need to applaud our government and very importantly be very proud of it. And the other bit is the health infrastructure. While there are so much of uncertainties with the new variant and what impact would have, what you read in the press is it spreads very fast, but perhaps the severity is much lower.
Yes.
But whatever be it, our health preparedness today, whether in terms of ICU beds, whether in terms of ventilators, whether in terms of oxygen, I don't think we are ready now, and we won't have to cart from east of India to the rest of the India like what happened during the second wave. And that gives me optimism that even if it were to come to India, we should be able to navigate it.
You actually met the Prime Minister along with other CEOs this week. We've got a budget coming up as well, and we already went through a pandemic budget, and this in a sense we hope was post-pandemic, but there are likely to be fresh challenges ahead. What would be your three big asks of the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister at this time?
Two things. If I give you a bit more insight, then I'll come to the budget.
Sure.
Of the discussion that we had with the Honorable Prime Minister yesterday. First, I'll speak about the overarching sentiments. First was that across there was a sense of gratitude for how he and his leadership have helped navigate the country during this very tough period. The second one was a sense of renewed optimism. Everyone was talking about not much about the problems they face, but more importantly, what the country has to do to get even bigger and better. And the third important bit was, he's a wonderful listener. And completely focused, he listened to every person who was talking about and giving him his or her perspective of what the country needs to do. Which is phenomenal to have leaders who are willing to listen, and that's where the interaction gets enriching. That you have a person who is at the helm of the country willing to listen, and then he had his people making copious notes, and I'm confident that he would take cognizance of all the points that were made.
What were the key points from FICCI's point of view that you think at this point?
See, from our perspective, what we did was we focused on one area, and that one was R&D and innovations. And Sonia, if I were to just give you a statistics of number of patents that India got in 2020, they were about 26,000. When you compare that with US, who had about 350,000, with China over 500,000. So that very clearly brings into focus the need for us to significantly up our game when it comes to R&D and innovations. And our capacity to appropriate a larger part of the value chain, global value chain, would depend on how innovative we are. because we will have to compete on cost, service, quality and innovations. So I think first as a nation we need to decide what are the areas we should focus on, because you can't be brilliant in everything. And I believe there are 3 areas where we should not be just good, but we should be best in class. And one would be biotech, which is the confluence of biology and technology, which I believe is going to be a huge space. We have seen that in vaccine development, but it's massive, going to open up in a very big way, in every which way. The second important bit is green tech. We have our growth aspirations, massive, and at the same time we have to reduce environment footprints. So this whole area of being able to still grow while reducing your, be it carbon capture, be it carbon storage, be it new technology which is environment friendly, this is going to be another massive space, and it's still coming up. And the third important bit is digitech. We have seen what's happened with shortage of semiconductors. So semiconductors, wafers, sensors, this whole area we will have to up our game. And while we have a talent in the country, I don't think we have been able to bring together the power of public R&D, private corporations, startups and academia. And when we bring this power together and start collaborating, then we will start to see magic happening. So our entire area was to give him some suggestions in this area on how do we up the game.
And in fact, it's interesting because when you talk about vaccination, and you're looking at vaccinations as the greatest example of public good, which is also something which corporate India looks at in a self-interest, because you need, for India's economy to revive, you need a healthy workforce, you need a workforce where people aren't falling sick. And do you think this is the right time that we should look at booster doses? I know HUL went through a huge vaccination program with thousands of its employees, but do we need to look now at booster doses for 2022 and protecting a workforce?
You know, your gut reaction would be yes. But from our perspective, I think we will have to science lead the discussion, because many of us have taken vector-based vaccine, and there is a school of thought that you may need mRNA, and so we should be clear about that. So there are 2 areas where I think we will have to rely on science for the government to take the right decision. One is the vaccines for the children, which is also very critical, and the second is the booster doses. So let us wait for the government to come out with a pronouncement on what their thinking is in this arena.
I know one thing that you're not a fan of is jugaad. So how...
Thank you, Sonia, for that question. You know, some of the suggestions we gave to the government was obviously how could we have innovative vehicles like a public R&D and a dominant private partner set up an enterprise. The second is how could we have innovation centers of excellence like the MIT Media Lab in the country, again promoted by academia and private sector. Or how could we have innovation hubs and innovation cities which goes beyond simple co-location. Co-location does not necessarily lead to collaboration. And the fourth one is how do we make academia and the public R&D look more at not just the basic research, but translational research and converting research into tangible products and successes in the marketplace. And the last important bit which I believe a lot in is that innovation and R&D is also impacted by culture. And in our case, this culture of jugaad, which is quick fixes, working around the edges, and in many ways it means less for less. That is not a great recipe for moving up the chain or R&D and innovations. So we should as a country promote, celebrate, applaud real innovations and not just tinkering on the edges.
Absolutely.
We need more for less and not less for less.
You made that point also about the economic recovery and many green shoots are coming, but of course looking ahead also at 2022 of how to getting credit into the system, and especially for MSMEs and smaller areas, especially with joblessness rates still constantly high. I mean, that's something HUL has such a pulse on, because of course you all reach out to consumers all across India. How is that something, or is that something concrete that is discussed, or FICCI would recommend as really cutting down, especially in the informal sector, cutting down on the pain the pandemic has caused?
Yeah, MSMEs is definitely a big area of concern, because for the very nature, because of the size of the business, they are more fragile. And also in India, we do not have a robust system of credit rating of MSMEs. So there is also there is a rather reluctance to lend to them. And if I were to give you an example, between 2008 and 2013, after the financial crisis in US, 60% of the jobs were created by MSMEs and not by the big corporations. So in India, MSMEs, we have to make them our backbone. And that would definitely mean is making them access capital in a much more easier way at a lower cost, access to technology, access to talent. So this whole area of MSMEs, I think we have to give it a fillip, and during my tenure as the president of FICCI, that's one of the areas I'm going to focus on.
We're seeing in India there's always this interesting dichotomy, because of course on the one hand you have the stock markets booming, and you've got startups now and IPOs, some new valuation coming up every week. What's your take on all this? On one is of course the stability of stock markets, and this whole startup IPO and the billion-dollar valuations.
Yeah, life is about paradox. So on one hand you have the booming stock market, on the other hand the real economy is still on the phase of recovery. On one hand you have the great attrition, because people who have got tech capabilities are getting multitude of jobs. On the other hand, there are the contact service providers who have been jobless. So life is about paradox. But the way I tell young entrepreneurs when they reach out to me is, or when I mentor them, is I always tell them, focus on creating value and not valuations. Because if you just focus on valuations could disappear if you don't create value. Yeah. So when we look at a sweet spot of innovation, then the first thing you need to ask yourself, what problem are you solving? What is the unmet need of your consumer which you're trying to solve? The second, you should ask yourself, what is the distinctive capability that you're building, which in many ways should be hard to replicate? And the third one is, are you appropriating a large part of the value chain? If you come out with a great idea, with great technology, but someone else appropriates a large part of the value chain, then you will not be able to create value. But if you have these three axes firmly under your grip, then great innovations happen, value gets created, and value results in valuation.
How, when you look at that also, when we talk of the paradoxes, and you often look at inequity, we talk about vaccine inequity at the moment.
That's right.
In fact, IMF, Geeta Gopinath just pointed out that vaccine inequity is actually what can slow down economic recovery. But when you look at inequity also between, often when we see corporate India, and there's this whole image of people in suits who are not in touch with real India. How do you look at with the problems of real India, of a workforce, of young people who can't get jobs, of young people who may not have who have a degree but don't have the skills to get hired?
Yeah, that's again a very good question. And if I were to give you an example which is very close to my heart, which is the company I lead, Hindustan, Unilever. We may be one of the most valuable companies in the country with a market cap of $70 billion, over $70 billion. But our soul is that of frugal middle class Indian. And we spend good amount of time in rural India, in people's homes, in kitchens, in bathrooms, to understand what their real problems are. I don't think without understanding them, you would be able to innovate and meet the needs. And the frugal mindset is also so important because, you don't want arrogance to seep in. At the end of the day, you are a custodian, and you're a custodian not just of the shareholders' wealth, but you're a custodian of various stakeholders' wealth. And we never in our company talk about that our strategy is to create market cap. No. We always say that we look after the interest of our consumers, our customers, our employees, our suppliers, the society and the planet. And if we do it well, then in the process, shareholder value will get created. So that's how you need to be led by purpose and values. And that is how you will ensure that while you're a successful corporation, your heart beats for India.
In fact, for you also as a corporate leader, and especially as I said, India's largest FMCG company, what was the biggest learning for you during these 2 years of the pandemic?
Several learnings for me. Yeah, one is in our leadership books, we never talked about compassion. Yeah, whenever you were to describe a leader, you would talk about a great strategist, a great orator who would stand on the pulpit and sway the people. But we never talked about compassion. Now this is borne home that is such an important trait in a leader. Compassion for not just your people who work for you, but for the society, for the country, for your neighbors. So that's very important. The second important bit is what I call as sense making. You don't have perfect information at all. You're far away from it. You have disparate information. How do you make sense out of it to help you navigate as to what you need to do? That's very important. The third important bit is what you call as speed or agility. Now everyone speaks about it, but if you have to peel the onion, then what exactly speed and agility means? First is, how do you identify an issue or an opportunity with speed? That's one. Once having identified, how fast you take a decision on it. Karna kya hai? Once you have decided what to do with it, how fast you execute on it. Yeah? So you have to take the speed to a new level altogether in this kind of environment, because these are not placid waters.
Absolutely.
And the fourth one is what I call as resilience. Corporations or businesses have been creating more shareholder value based on efficiency and effectiveness. Yeah? That means you're sweating your assets. But when you have this kind of crisis, you need resilience. Resilience means spare capacity. So the challenge is where in your value chain you have spare capacity, and where in the value chain you drive for effectiveness and efficiency. For instance, the semiconductors. Just imagine, because they were not resilient enough, the quantum of loss they would have incurred because of opportunity loss of sales is massive.
So how do you see corporate India, or actually the corporate world, why India, globally reinventing itself? When do you think that you're going to see the workforce back completely in offices? Do you think the office as we know it now is dead? Corporate India, I think, has done well in many ways. If you were to just look at a barometer of profits, it indicates that they've done a damn good job of tightening the belt, driving efficiency hard. So that's one bit of reinvention where you have more muscle power, more firepower to fight the battles once things become normal. As far as the future of work is concerned, I think hybrid is there to stay. Yeah, the days of 9 to 5, 5 days a week working in office, travel like mad people, those days are gone. But let me also, Sonia, assure you that please don't write the obituary of a workplace. Yeah, it will be far too ahead of time, and it won't happen, because there is a huge benefit, especially when it comes to collaboration, of sitting together as a team,
looking a person in the eye, sharing a joke or a laughter, which breaks ice, and working together more effectively as a team. But not every day everyone will be required to come to work. I think those days are fading away. But every company will have to find their own balance on when do you bring people to work, or when do they come to work, and when do they work from the place of choice. Today technology allows you to do that.
HUL is a trendsetter in so many ways. How is HUL going to run this now, especially with Omicron now?
First is for us, people working from homes was something which was there even when before the pandemic. So it was not something new. But what happened was working from home at scale. That's been the big shift that has happened. And there are different people. There are many people who are absolutely excited to come to work. In many ways, there have been women who constitute a large part of our workforce now. Say if you take management, 44% are women, and in another few years will be gender balanced. And there are many women who say we want to step out. It's because they have a lot of stress, looking after the kids, because many of the household help are not there, looking after the kitchen, working. So many of them want to step out. Similarly with men, many of them want to step out. But many of them, so we aren't forcing people. We are increasingly kind of cajoling them, because we have rechecked the workplace. So the cubic feet of space given to an individual has gone up tremendously. We have also, for instance, given them people when they enter the office. Of course, we do rapid antigen test. We monitor everything and all. We are a sanitizer soap company, so those are very well taken care of. But just from a cultural perspective, we have also given bands to people. Whether they would want to be hugged, or they would want just say a fist shake, or they want to keep at a distance. So you wear that bands and you can tell the others, I want to maintain a distance. And others are very happy. So one is trying to bring in a very flexible approach to things.
The world's changed so rapidly around us. We're now into this whole debate also about cryptocurrency. And for someone like you, as I said, a global corporate as well, of course, heading HUL. How do you see this whole debate that we're now seeing in this changing world, and even the currency around us? Do you think crypto is something that India and the world is ready for?
We are at a stage of evolution where we should let our central bank and the government decide at this stage what is in the best interest of the nation. Because crypto is one area where very few people understand. Very few people understand the implications, and what the government and the central bank has to look at, the larger interest of the country as opposed to looking at the interest of a few. So I'm glad that the government and the bank has started looking into it, and they should come out with a very clear point of view on what is the road ahead for us as a country as far as crypto is concerned.
And of course, now, Mr. Mehta, we're seeing the rise of the global Indian CEO. In fact, even one from the global Unilever family is now the Chanel CEO, and so many other tech companies.
Oh, absolutely. We are so proud of Leena Nair. She's done an absolutely amazing job. Another quality product of Hindustan Unilever.
And what is it about the Indian CEO that makes them all heading so many now companies globally as well?
It's, I think it's an age of Indian managers. First is, we are people who are taught to navigate the rough and tumble of Indian chaos.
Absolutely.
So that's a very important trait. And remember, I was talking to you about sense making. Indians intuitively get into sense making. The second is, India is multicultural. Before this job in HUL, I was chairman of Unilever North Africa, Middle East. And I used to run 20 countries, from Oman in the east to Morocco in the west. And The 29 states of India are more heterogeneous than the 20 countries of Middle East. Because there it is one predominant culture, one predominant religion, one predominant language. Here we are so different. Palate is different, culture is different, tastes are different, beauty quotient is different, language is different. So we are able to navigate the multicultural world very well. Then the third important bit is Indians' ethos of hard work, integrity, is values, keeping the company above self. All those things are coming into play in a very big way. And last but not the least, I think empathy, which is now becoming a big thing in the Western world, that also comes naturally to an Indian person. So compassion, empathy, that comes in very naturally because we live in a country where there is huge amount of paradox, and our culture teaches us to do that. And so those are the traits where helping the Indian managers succeed in the global world.
That's really fantastic. But finally, is for all the young people watching who look up to you as a role model and so many other global CEOs, what's your advice to them as we end 2021 and go into 2022?
No, I would certainly say is that, while the pandemic is not over, I think on one side I would always tell people to remain cautious. Don't throw caution to the wind. Wearing your mask, you're keeping the physical distance, using sanitizer and soaps, hopefully Lifebuoy. All those habits which you have inculcated, the right habits, don't throw them away. But I also believe that a year down the road, we Indians would be able to look back and say that we navigated the crisis better than anyone else or as good as anyone else, and we have come out stronger than when we entered the crisis. I think that would give such a dose of adrenaline to the entire country, and it will then hopefully take us to the next trajectory of growth that all of us Indians seek, which is sustained growth of 8+% for years to come. And I think our destiny beckons us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mehta. It was wonderful speaking to you. Thank you for being on the
Likewise, Sonia. Thank you so much. And goodbye, everyone. Keep safe and wish you all a very happy 22.
Thank you.